Montreal, Toronto, and
Wow.
yeah, quite a few places.
Yeah, it's really worldwide, isn't it? I went in Melbourne a few months ago.
Okay.
I just had a lake in the middle of the botanical garden. I just had a hunting competition. Sign me up. Yeah, so my name's Cameron. I'll be with you for the next 45 minutes or so, taking you up and down the river. We're going to go 1 mile up. We'll pass through 7 of the university's 31 colleges. We'll pass over 9 bridges as well.
How many colleges?
There are 31 in total. There are 7 on the river today. And when we get to Queen's College and Mathematical Bridge, I will just turn around and we'll come back and line exactly the same way. Okay, so we will see everything twice. So you don't need to worry about getting a perfect image on the way out. We'll just see it again going back. And as we go, I'll point out to make it nice. Give you guys a bit of
Do you want to use my umbrella?
There we go.
Can you use my umbrella smaller?
Bigger. Please direct my way.
We're going to bigger one.
Speak louder or slower.
Sit this one.
I want to get this one.
Let's make sure we're in front of my camera. I don't know. It's okay.
Is this ruining your view?
No, very good. What's the body of water called?
This is the River Cam.
River Cam.
Yes.
C-A-M.
C-A-M, yeah, exactly. It's where the word Cambridge comes from.
It doesn't matter. Put it back on the
Cam,
side.
Cam
Put it back
Bridge.
on the side.
So the original canal bridge, as it were, is the first one that's in state at the moment. That black and gold one on the west. So that's currently known as Magdalen Bridge. The current version of the bridge is called 1823. It's the second oldest cast iron bridge in England, but it is on the site of the first ever bridge over the River Cam in the city. So this would have been about 731 AD. The Anglo-Saxons arrived on this section of the river, and a few minutes away is Castle Hill, which is the highest natural point in Cambridge, so it's a good spot at which to overlook the crossing point. So they would have built a very rickety old wooden bridge, established a new town centre.
I'd rather just get this.
All right. You got it.
Yeah, so Bunting had originally been used in the fenland surrounding Cambridge. When it came to the city itself, it was used commercial, transfer heavy goods up and down the river. It didn't really become a leisure activity as we know it until the 1800s. And even then it was reserved solely for the students of the university, and everyone else were riff-raff of Cambridge. Very, very nice. It didn't allow them out of the water, but thankfully a lot changed. No, and its shallowness is about 1 metre, and its deepness is about 4. So it does fluctuate quite a bit as we go along. The deepest part is just beyond the bridge. So pretty much every time you put a pole in there, it will change something. Yeah, so Magdalen Bridge really marks the starting point of the tour, because from this one onwards, everything that we can see, with the exception of the restaurants to the left, it's all part of Cambridge University. When I first started this job, one of the questions I'll be asked most was, where is Cambridge University? Which is obviously it's a valid question, it's quite a difficult one to tackle, because it's really everywhere.
Now you're thinking, why is it called modelling college?
There is no central campus, there's no big golden gate linked to one. Collegiate schools, it's all over. It's made up of over 150 departments and faculties, and 31 colleges, of which there are of course 7 of them. And the colleges themselves, despite the name college, they are mostly residential. They're made up of buildings like chapels, libraries, dining rooms. They're primarily just used as accommodation for students, and this is why they're so often compared to houses and Harry Potter.
This is a house.
When students apply to the university, they'll typically choose a course at a particular college. And they can choose any college they like as well, because there's no subject specialisation, which is probably the most common misconception about the university structure. You can study any of the courses at any of the 31 colleges. Some of them do have reputations for being particularly strong in certain fields, and that's either to do with any notable alumni, or it's to do with how the colleges were founded, because many of them were founded on top of existing institutions. And 7 on the river happy for us, have generally been regarded amongst the most prestigious of the entire university, largely just because we're on the river, which used to be a sign of prestige in and of itself, and this is why the oldest colleges are really densely packed together in the centre of town, the newer ones are condemned towards the outskirts of the city. It's sad. So all around us now, both sides of the boat, we have made it to the first college we're going to talk about. This is St John's, founded in 1511. St John's is the second largest, the second wealthiest of the 31. When we talk about how wealthy colleges are, we're just talking about their endowments, so that's land holdings, investments, donations. St John's is currently worth about £750 million, so rather a lot of money. And historically it's been regarded as part of the Big Three, along with King's and Trinity. These are the most popular colleges amongst prospective applicants to the university and have been for many, many years. Size and wealth does play a role here, but a lot of it is also down to aesthetic value, because the students will just turn up and visit, and because there are no subject restrictions, they will just decide this is what I want to do. It's really hard not to be blown away by some of the architecture, especially at St John's. Notably, this bridge just in front of us is one of the crowning jewels of the whole college, one of Cambridge's most famous bridges. It's the Bridge of Sighs. It is by no means the original Bridge of Sighs. There are actually 9 in the world. So there's one here, there's also one in Oxford. There's even one in Las Vegas, part of a Venetian hotel. Of course, the original Bridge of Sighs is in Venice, in Italy. Now, the original had the name Bridge of Sighs endowed upon it by Lord Byron. And the reason for the name is because it used to lead from the palaces towards the prison cells. So the idea was that these Venetian prisoners would walk across the bridge one last time, catch a glimpse of the city through the windows, and then let out a sigh of regret, sadness, maybe even remorse to find it over the years. At least that was the idea. Just in front of us, we have the Wren Bridge, designed in 1709, finished in 1711, designed by Sir Christopher Wren, who's also responsible for St Paul's Cathedral in London. Quite prolific in Cambridge as well. He did the chapel at Pembroke College and Emmanuel College, and also the Wren Library, which we'll see a bit later on. But us punters, we prefer to call this bridge the Concussion Bridge, for semi-obvious reasons. It's not really my favourite spot on the river. So it has been knocking punters out for over 300 years now, but it's not really designed for anyone over 3 feet tall. But as we come out just over my left shoulder, we see a little flood marking engraved into the stonework. That's the worst ever recorded flood in Cambridge. That was March 14th, 1947. They called it the Great Flood. There had been a particularly harsh winter with snow mounting up on the banks, and then spring sprung in the space of about 1 week before it burst its banks. And about 20,000 people were forced from their homes, so really quite traumatic. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and the surrounding farmland was just inundated with water, so the whole county's economy was out of action for a few good months. Just over my right shoulder, you can see my favourite building. This is the new quarter St John's College. It's still part of St John's. This was built in 1831 alongside the Bridge of Sighs, and it is used, believe it or not, as accommodation for the students. That's just a bedroom. That is where they live. So about 150 second years of St John's are lucky enough to say that they live inside a castle, which is really just the epitome of the accommodation here starts at about £120 a week and works up to about £250, which, relative to the other universities in the UK, and given the calibre of some of these buildings, it isn't really as much as other people first expect. There are a few reasons for this. The colleges just rent out this accommodation outside of terms to summer schools and other organisations. They just come in and pay more than the students do. But also lots of the buildings that we're going to see today are listed under UK law, so they're protected. So the infrastructure hasn't really changed at all since their first build. So the new court's almost 200 years old now. So you've got very thick limestone walls, very high ceilings, and single pane windows. So over the winter, it is freezing in buildings like this. There's heating of sorts, you know, radiators and such. But if the building's exactly the same, there's only so much they can do to prevent that, really. And I've also heard that the students love to complain about how the walls are so thick that the Wi-Fi is terrible, which makes getting any work done an absolute nightmare. It's kind of the whole point of being a student. So that's the case, be careful what you wish for, really. It looks stunning from where we are, but living inside you may take quite a different view. Some students just don't care, you know, pack an extra blanket.
Yeah, I did it was.
Yeah, so just here to my left, we are now into the grounds of Trinity College. Trinity is generally regarded as Cambridge's most prestigious college. It's the largest, it's the wealthiest, and by most accounts it's the most academically successful too. Excuse me mate, mind your back. No worries. Founded in 1546 by Henry VIII himself. Of course, being the king and founding a college, he'd want it to be the biggest and best that there was and ever will be. Henry was exactly the same, but he also didn't want to use any royal funds. He didn't really want to spend any money, so he had to improvise. And he grouped together 7 hospitals and 2 existing colleges and named the whole thing Trinity College. So he did that in 1546, he died a few months later, but he ended up leaving most of his personal wealth in his will to Trinity, and that included a lot of the land and money that he'd taken from the Catholic Church during the English Reformation. For this reason, Trinity's current net worth is about £2.4 billion. That is more than any college at Cambridge or Oxford. It's more than double the second wealthiest, St John's. The endowment of the entire university is about £8 billion. So Trinity makes up over a quarter of it. It's just one of the 31 colleges.
It's going to be normal, 16 to 9 ratio.
So these colleges, they are very much financial institutions just as much as academic. They're semi-autonomous from universities, so they're free to conduct their own finances as they see fit. And Trinity itself is actually one of the 25 largest landowners in the UK. They own all the land surrounding Felixstowe docks, so if they want to expand, they really have no choice but to add Trinity as much money as it likes. They also own the land under the O2 Arena in London. And in 2012, rather bizarrely, Trinity College decided to buy a 50% stake in 11 Tesco supermarkets all around the UK. So quite an eclectic mix of investments, but it's, I suppose, that kind of diversification that allows you to keep a network the size it is. You know, one goes down, another goes up. I'm sure it's what Henry VIII would have wanted. And in terms of academic success, Cambridge Trinity is really unparalleled. The university, as a collective, boasts 121 Nobel Prize winners amongst its former students and faculty, and 34 of them were here at Trinity. To put that into perspective, that means for the Trinity College of the country, it would rank 5th in the world for Nobel Prizes. The level of success here is absolutely extraordinary. And there is, of course, a degree of academic competition between colleges. One of the ways in which that manifests itself is called the Tompkins table. This is a league table that comes out at the end of every year. It's very simple. It just ranks all 29 undergrad colleges by the percentage of their graduates who got first. Trinity sat at the top for 7 years running, from 2011 to 2017. They have since been overtaken by Christ's College, with the likes of Rob Oppenheimer, Charles Darwin, and even Sacha Baron Cohen studied. Trinity found themselves year after year in the top 3.
I think this probably decreases
Yeah, so Ali G and Borat was distinguished Cambridge. Yeah, many English comedians and actors attended Cambridge. People like Stephen Fry, Thompson, Jimmy Carr, he went to Oxford, I believe. Yeah, many of them would have attended a really popular student-run theatre club called the Footlights, where a lot of them met. It still runs to this day. The ADC Theatre, which is just about 3 minutes away from where we got the boat. And just here to my left, we are now into the grounds of the oldest college at Trinity today, the second oldest being University. This is Clare College. They have been doing a bit of renovation here recently. They've done up some of the accommodation, and they've also finished a new riverside cafe and a little gap in the wall just here to my left as well. Given how old these buildings are and the scale of this project, they believe that it cost over £30 million. Now, colleges don't usually pour that much into renovations, but this is a bit of a special case because Clare College is about to celebrate its 700-year anniversary. As an institution, it can be traced back to 1326. And of course, with the oldest college on the river, we have the oldest bridge as well. This is Clare Bridge. Not a particularly creative name, but the Stonework here is getting on for 400 years old. Went up originally in 1640. And it's a grade 1 listed building, so any renovation or restoration is so difficult. The bridge has essentially been left to its own devices for the last 400 years. You'll see very dipsy charge breaking early use. They no longer have cars running across to fear for structural integrity. It's also leaking, so it really doesn't fill you with confidence as you pass under. But if it survived this long, it'd be good for another 20 minutes or so. I hope. We'll find out. And then here it is, to my left. If you see Cambridge in any guidebooks, on any postcards, or on any fridge magnets, this is probably the first thing that you're going to see. This is King's College, founded in 1441 by Henry VI when he was just 19 years old. King's is so often confused as being either the largest college or the wealthiest college. I've even been asked if this little bit here is just Cambridge University. It is none of these things. It is just the prettiest college. That is all it boils down to. It's the face of the entire city, most aesthetically pleasing. Cambridge City Council actually uses King's Chapel as its logo. It's by far and away the city's most iconic building. King's Chapel is actually the second largest chapel in the world, the only one bigger being the Sistine in the Vatican City. And what makes this a chapel as opposed to a church or a cathedral is simply the fact it's built on privately owned ground. You know, chapels are not usually this big, they are typically just private places of worship. Owned by members of nobility, really, barons, dukes, lords. This one is significantly larger than your conventional chapel. They laid the foundation stone in 1446, under the impression it would take about 11 years to build. It ended up taking 98 years to build instead, so a rather optimistic estimate, to say the least. It spanned 5 monarchs, nearly a century, but as you can see, probably worth the wait. It is absolutely stunning. And to the chapel's right is the Gibbs building, designed in 1724. It houses offices for academics and fellows that are associated with King's. It's made out of Portland stone. Now, when the original White House went up in the 1790s, it was widely believed in Cambridge they'd also used Portland stone, whereas they'd actually used sandstone and just painted it white. Nevertheless, that led to a very short-lived rumour here that our Gibbs building had actually inspired the original White House. I feel like we need to humble ourselves a bit. They don't really look very similar at all. However, the semicircle shaped window just above the archway, now colloquially known as the Oval Office of King's College, because being with the provost goes back to day-to-day business. So most colleges will have a master, some will have a president, and others will have a provost. It's mostly a ceremonial role, lots of them have other jobs. They oversee any financial and academic decisions that are made by the colleges. But it's mostly a rubber stamp process because it will have already been seen through by the Board of Trustees.
How does one get on?
Well, you'd have to be a fellow of the college, which is essentially just a sort of distinguished academic that's sort of worked your way up the system. So the way that it works is the fellows, they are affiliated with a particular college that will fund their research and maybe provide them with accommodation in the city.
Is anyone living in it?
Yeah, so this is accommodation, yeah. So, well, not many people are living in it at the moment because term is finished for the summer. But this is Bodley's Court. It houses third years for studying at King's. It's built in 1893.
Windows look so old. I was like,
Yeah. Yeah, when punters start this job, we're told to say this is some of the most luxurious accommodation at the whole university, and there are grand pianos in every room. None of us have ever been inside, but we do know that the rooms here come in sets, so everyone gets a bedroom as well as a study or a sitting area. So the 3 windows just up here on my left, that's all reserved for 1 student.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they get their own flats really. It's really, really nice.
Are there tours available?
Tours?
Yeah.
There are walking tours that you'll be able to go inside the colleges. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to go inside any of the accommodation.
All right.
However, the university, they have their open days, I think, at the end of this week. So if you wanted to act like a prospective student, you may be able to get into some of the accommodation on a little tour. come at a perfect time. Really. And obviously, as grand and luxurious as Bodley's Court is, the university clearly decided they needed to take it down a peg or two. So they built this just next to it, up here on my left. This is the Erasmus building. It was designed in 1959 by a man called Basil Spence. When it first went up, most people found it to be a desecration of an ancient site of a college that's almost 600 years old. The college itself, they actually loved this building. They thought that it fitted in really well with Edwardian and Georgian architecture. The rest of the human population weren't really so sure. Basil Spence was actually suspected of having attended Oxford and trying to sabotage Cambridge out of allegiance to his former university. So not particularly well received, but it is actually grade 2 listed under UK law, and it's used as a accommodation for the students of Queen's College, which is on both sides of the river. So Queen's is the last college that we'll see before we turn around. Founded in 1448 by Lady Margaret of Anjou. She was actually the wife of Henry VI, who founded King. So really quite a wholesome husband and wife affair on the river. And the two sides of Queen's that we see are colloquially referred to as the dark side and the light side. It's fairly clear to see which is which. Just up here on my right is the light side. This is some of the newest accommodations on the river. Cripps Court, going from 1974. And just opposite is the oldest building we're going to see today. That is President's Lodge, but around 1462. It houses the offices of the President of the Queen's. And the only way to get from one side of Queen's to the other would be by using the wooden bridge just in front of us. The official name for this wooden bridge is actually just the wooden bridge, which is a terrible name for a bridge made out of wood. So it's much more commonly referred to as the mathematical bridge. It was designed in 1749 and it uses quite an interesting architectural technique called tangents and radial trusses, which is really just a bit of jargon, a bit of gobbledygook. All it means is that the bridge is made up entirely of straight beams that are interlocked at such angles is that when you're standing on it and walking across, the weight that you exert is equally distributed through every single beam because there are as many tension points as the compression points. So if you think about if you had a matchstick in your hand and you're trying to press it in from both sides using your fingers, it would be almost impossible to break because wood is just so strong when it's subject to compression as opposed to bending it. And this is really how the bridge works, with no weight on it. Gravity is already ensuring that beams are compressed against one another. And when you walk across, because your weight's equally distributed, the bridge actually gets a little bit stronger. So the more weight you put on the mathematical bridge, technically speaking, the stronger you'll get. That does have its limits. Wood is only so strong, and it will eventually just collapse under its own weight. But it is a really, really interesting design. It is also the turning point of our tour. It'll take us right up to Silver Street Bridge, just in front of us, spin us around, and then we'll be back the other way. So just through there you can see the weir, the mill pond. So that's kind of the end of the river. It's the end of what we call the college back. So it's kind of like back to reality. So you can punt on a section of the river just further up down to a village called Branchell. You're not really punting through anything. It's much more rural. So you can hire your own way out.
And where's that water coming from?
That's coming from a section of the river just a bit further up. So that just flows down into this section, and this river gently flows downstream up towards Jesus Green. You can bring your own punt if you have one, yeah. But the best thing to do if you wanted to give it away yourself would be hire it from one of the companies that do operate themselves. Our company doesn't. 3 companies actually behind us.
Right.
And one company further up.
So that one seems to be a self-fire.
It is, yeah. You'll notice as well the self-fire punts are about half the size of this one. They're so much smaller, so much more responsive to what we move. And it's really funny because you get people that the hardest thing to do is just keep the boat in a straight line. Yeah. And you get people who they can't necessarily move in a straight line, but they have strong arms so they can push the boat around. So you will get people on a Saturday afternoon that are flying around the river, having no idea where they're going to go next. And the fear in their eyes is really something to behold. And so we get used to just slaloming around the river, avoiding all of these boats while trying to keep it toward a coherent way. There will be, at its peak, on a Saturday afternoon in the summer, there will be about 250 punts on this market at any given time. And about 25% of them will be doing it for the first time. So you can kind of see where the chaos comes from, the tie-ups, lockdowns, collisions. Quite common, but it's just part and parcel of it.
How often do people fall in?
I'd say during the summer, maybe like one or 2 a day. One day last summer, I saw 8 different people fall in. I just had no idea what was going on. I've never seen anything like that before. There's just something in the air that day. So every time I went out for another call, I'd see someone fall in. I felt like it was me at that point. I was cursing. so just back to the mathematical bridge as well. Obviously, it's a really, really popular bridge. I have people on the boat before that have told me that the only reason they've come to Cambridge is to see the bridge, which is like a bit dramatic. Sorry?
Just the mathematics.
Yeah, it's a bit dramatic, but
Pretty underwhelming, isn't it?
yeah. Well, 99% of the time they're not really here for its design; they're here for a story. So loads of Cambridge locals love to go around telling people the bridge was actually designed by Isaac Newton when he studied over at Trinity College, and that he designed it with no nuts and bolts to hold it together. Unfortunately, this story is just a story. A load of old rubbish made up by punters like me about 100 years ago to try and make Nottingham sound that tiny bit better and to attract as many people as possible to the bridge. The truth is, it did go up in 1749, but Isaac Newton by that point had actually been dead for 22 years, so more than anything, it would have been terrifying if he designed this bridge. It was actually the work of a man called William Etheridge and built by another man called James Essex. And they don't really get the credit they deserve just because this story is as popular as it is. But the idea that it had no nuts and bolts originally came from the fact that they used to use wooden pegs that were driven into the beams. So from a distance it would genuinely appear as if there was nothing holding the bridge together. So quite an easy mistake to make, and sometimes people just don't let the truth get in the way of the story.
So, in terms of lectures,
Yes.
is that something that the college put out? Or?
Yeah, it is. So all of the land on both sides is all owned by Queens. I'm not necessarily sure when they got these egg chairs. They've been here for as long as I've been doing this job.
Oh, really?
Probably bought from the home base or something. Yeah, so the college is really kind of like a social hub for the students where they just eat, drink, sleep, study, socialise. The bulk of the learning takes place elsewhere. There are 6 sites for the dotted around the city that are mostly made up of lecture halls and apartment buildings. That's where you'll see people just cycling off to early in the morning. And in any given lecture, you have students of every single college. So, if you study engineering at King's, if you study engineering at Queen's, you will study exactly the same course material. It has no bearing on the stuff that you actually
Getting close. Getting
That way
close.
you go.
You're alright, Michelle, or do you want something to take over?
No, I'm good. I don't trust anybody.
Yeah, so the pride flags hanging out the window here, they're hit all year round in memory of Alan Turing, who had rooms and bodies caught when he was studying at King's College. No one knows exactly which room it was, so everyone just claims it to him. But he was elected a fellow here when he was just 24 years old. He was one of the youngest fellows in the history of the university. He's known as the father of computer science. He's especially for solving the German Enigma code during World War II, estimated to have ended the war 2 years early, saved millions of lives. When he returned from war, he was prosecuted for his homosexuality. He died in 1952 after taking a bite out of an apple that he had later signed. It's a really tragic end to a national hero. They have actually unveiled, just recently, a Turing sculpture in the grounds of King's College. It's not a likeness, it's kind of like a cubic, I don't want to say blob, but it's close to a blob, but it's in the grounds of King's. You can actually go inside and have a look. So usually a fellowship is reserved for someone coming towards the end of their academic career, not someone who's just finished their master's degree, such as his genius, such as accolades that they felt he deserved. So there are many, many kinds of fellows. Most of them will have been awarded the fellowship due to academic merit. They will have studied it in a paper thesis. But sometimes people just become a fellow out of long service. It doesn't necessarily have to be academic. Many different kinds. So the fellows themselves, they are affiliated to a particular college, so they will teach students.
Does it remind you of any other buildings you've seen around the world?
So it's back against the rights. Back, of course, to that famous chapel. One of the most famous features of the chapel, I'd probably say, is the carol service that takes place every year on Christmas Eve. It's called the 9 Lessons in Carols, and it's televised in the UK to about 2 to 3 million people. One of the centerpieces of the whole show is a solo rendition of Once in Royal David City, which is sung by one of the boys from the choir, who's usually only about 12 or 13 years old. There are about 30 boys in this choir, and none of them have any idea who's going to sing the solo until about 10 minutes before the service begins. So they've all practiced so thoroughly, not knowing who it will be. And then the choir master will just pick one of them out at random and say words to the effect of, "You're going to be singing in front of 2 million people in 10 minutes. So good luck." Ironically, the idea is that they don't get too nervous and overthink it, because it sounds terrible, but it's probably a little bit better than knowing a month as well, because then you've got all that time to overthink.
And I turned around and they were just like on each other. I was like,
Yeah, those are the King's cows. So traditionally the west side of the river was just sort of open farmland, which cattle and other animals would just be grazing. Cambridge is quite a traditional institution, so kind of to maintain this. So a few years ago, one of those cows died, and it was front page news in the Cambridge Independent. I don't know if it's just a very slow news day, but they were actually beloved creatures. Maybe a little bit of both.
Mario.
For example, the reason why I'm not doing college is because the ex-head of the World Bank is teaching there, so I thought it'd be quite an interesting person to learn economics on. Yeah, sitting here in shape, but
So just here to my left, we have Clare College Gardens. During the summertime, these are considered amongst the most scenic gardens in Cambridge. And the lucky few that graduate from Clare are afforded the rights to get married here, they so much. I think the waiting list is currently about 9 years, so people are just making appointments, hoping they're engaged by the time it rolls around. That's probably the best way to go about it. But can you just make out that little tower that's poking above the tree line, just to our left as well? That is Cambridge University Library. There are 131 libraries around the city that are affiliated with the university. That one is by far and away the largest. It is one of 6 legal deposit libraries in the UK, which means it's entitled to ask for a free copy of every single book that has ever been published by a British author. So there are about 9 million books in there. And it's got to the point where we had to open up a new shelving facility up near Ely. And if you actually stretched out the shelves in that facility, it would go all the way from Ely down to London. It's about 72 miles, just full of books that no one's really using. So if a student wants to use one of the books, they'll just request it from the facility and it'll be with them the next day. And then just here to my right is the second most recent addition to this stretch of the river. Very helpfully labelled as well. It is the Jerwood Library, going back to 1998. It's the student library at Trinity Hall. It holds about 30,000 books across 5 floors, open 24/7 to the students there. So Trinity Hall, well, the Jerwood Library itself is actually rather unique among the more modern architecture on the river because it's actually in keeping with the distinctive style of the college. Trinity Hall is really characterised by its red brick architecture. So it starts on the river and works its way all the way back down Garrett Hostel Lane. And it's probably best known for being the college of Professor Stephen Hawking. This is where he completed his PhD thesis. He'd always wanted to study in Cambridge, but his father had actually been to Oxford and therefore insisted that Stephen had to go there before he went anywhere else. So he relented. He went into physics at Oxford for 3 years. When he arrived in Cambridge, he decided that he much preferred it here, so he stayed for the rest of his life. He was a fellow at Gonville and Keyes College, just behind Trinity Hall, for about 50 years, right up to his death. So Trinity Hall, back there, is right next to Trinity College, just here, and there's not the picture. They are 2 completely separate colleges. Trinity Hall is actually the original Cambridge Trinity, from 1350. So it's the 5th oldest college at the university.
Yeah. That's all the original stone.
It is, yeah. So Trinity Bridge was built in 1765.
हमारे सामने की पिक्चर लो बेटा
It was actually built by James Essex, who also did the mathematical model, to completely different designs, so jack of the trade. So we are back to Trinity, just up here on my right, and it's quite nice for us on the river because the bit of Trinity that we see is one of the most famous parts of the entire college. It's a huge rectangular building. This is the Wren Library. So this is the largest college library in Cambridge. It holds about 70,000 books in the protected archive. And while it was designed in 1676, the whole thing ended up taking about 19 years to build, because designing a protected archive right next to a river in the 1600s is asking for trouble, really. The river used to flood quite a lot indeed. And so Christopher Wren decided that he'd just put the whole thing on stilts. Every single book is stored upstairs, but there's not really anything to see downstairs besides a few tables and chairs, so that in the event of a flood, the water would just rush straight through the bottom and everything upstairs would remain completely untouched. So quite a simple design. Wren actually wrote in his diary that it was the most boring building he'd ever designed, but quite ingenious given the circumstances. And the word library itself is very misleading nowadays, because the collection of books in there resembles much more of an exhibition or a museum. You've got the first ever copy of Newton's Principia Mathematica, one of Shakespeare's first folios, Oppenheimer's handwritten notes on the Trinity test, and if you're in the mood for a bit of lighter reading, the first ever written manuscripts of Winnie the Pooh and the House on Pooh Corner are also stored up there inside the Red Library.
How old is the Winnie the Pooh story?
Well, A.A. Milne was studying here in the 1910s, so about 110 years old. Yeah, Jesse came here on mathematics scholarship, so a bit of a jack of all trades. He just donated all of his manuscripts to the college when he left. And his son Christopher Robin also came to Cambridge. He studied at Hughes Hall. Yeah, the library doesn't just contain books. There are lots of busts of famous people to have studied at Trinity, people like Lord Byron, Alfred Lord Tennyson, of course he used it himself. There is also a single lock of Newton's hair in a vase, which is really weird, but if you want to try and clone the DNA, I think the library is open to the general public from 12 to 2 in the afternoon. So it's completely free as well. We are just back through the bridge of size, just in front of us. I mentioned earlier on the way out that this bridge is named after the original in Venice. If you guys are familiar with the bridge of size in Venice, you'll know that it looks absolutely nothing like this. The one in Venice, it's a lot higher up, it is a different colour, it's much smaller, it's much less ornate than this bridge as well. They don't share a name because of their aesthetic similarity, they share a name largely because of Queen Victoria III. This bridge just in front of us, this was her favourite bridge in the whole city of Cambridge. She visited on many, many occasions. And on one occasion, she must have said something along the lines of, "Oh my goodness, doesn't that look just like the Bridge of Sighs in Venice?" She'd never seen the Bridge of Sighs in Venice, she'd actually never been to Venice in her life, but she had read a poem that described it, and this is what she imagined it to look like. They are both covered bridges with arched spaces, so that's really where the similarity ends. Her advisors knew she was wrong, but they were also completely terrified of her and wanted to keep their jobs, so they just agreed and renamed it. It was originally called the New Bridge, because it was a new bridge, and it was slightly more interesting name. It's been that way for about 150 years. This is devastating. But it's neo-Gothic architecture. It's built to look much older than it actually is. It's about 400 or 500 years old, actually about 200 years old. It's all relative, isn't it? another one of the most divisive, most polarizing buildings on the river. This is the Cripps building, designed in 1967. Some regard it as nothing more than a brutalist eyesore. Some say it's one of the most significant buildings in the city, because it was one of the first buildings in the world to be designed using a computer instead of pad and pen. So it's designed by Powell and Moyer. Yes, this one's here. It's designed by Powell and Moyer using computer-aided design. You can quite clearly see they were lacking any technology for spheres or cylinders. Just the whole thing's very blocky. Not really a single round edge to be found anywhere on the entire building. And it was opened by the guest of honour at the time, the current King of the United Kingdom, Charles III, to the time the Prince of Wales. He gave a 20-minute speech about the wonders of technology, and then after that speech, someone left him a bit too close to a microphone, and he was heard saying that this building looked like a multi-storey car. Multi-storey car park. A charming man.
Hilarious.
It's like what he did. This woman is bigoted. Is this private houses or is it like?
This is all part of Magdalen College. Yeah, so Magdalen is the last college on the river. It's quite unique because where other colleges kind of start at the river and work their way back towards the town, Magdalen just works its way along. So from this point until the end of the tour, save for that deli, the orange building, everything that we're going to see is all part of Magdalen.
This pretty much just looks like a house.
It does, yeah. Yeah, so that's also student accommodation.
Wow.
So that's really nice, right by the river. So Magdalen itself was founded in 1542 by a man called Thomas Audley. Thomas Audley was the Lord Chancellor of King Henry VIII throughout the last part of his reign, and therefore played quite a key role in the dissolution of the monasteries. He spent a lot of time seizing land, arresting key Catholic figures, and cutting off a few heads here and there as well. He was absolutely ruthless to do this, and he made an absolute fortune. And when it came to founding a college in Cambridge, he was actually given it as a gift by his boss, the teacher. Now, because it was now his college, he could name it whatever he liked, and he wanted to name it after himself. You know, wasn't the humblest man in the world. But the university, they knew about this man, they knew about what he had done and where his money had come from. They were happy to take his money on the one condition that his name was nowhere near the college. So he decided he would improvise and named it instead.
And here ahead of us we have the Magdalen Bridge.
However, he insisted that we should all use the archaic French pronunciation of Magdalen, which he believed was the only way of squeezing his own name, Audley, into the name of his college. You know, Magdalen, Audley. They're vaguely similar. The original spelling was just the letter M followed by his name, Audley, with an N on the end, so not particularly subtle. They did eventually change the spelling, but that's why it looks like Magdalen when it is in fact Magdalen. Just like to make things really good. And in 1988, Magdalen actually became the last college at Cambridge or Oxford to allow women to study. And the decision to allow women into Magdalen provoked such an uproar, such outrage amongst the boys at their time.
1988.
1988.
The first time they allowed the women in the university.
At Magdalen College, women were first admitted to Cambridge in 1876. That's when Gerson College was founded. But until the 1950s, they weren't awarded degrees. They would study here, but they weren't allowed degrees. Sorry? Yeah, so these boys of Magdalen, they heard this news that women will be allowed into their college, and they decided they'd stage a protest. They paraded a coffin full of books through the town centre. They put the flag at half-mast. They wore black armbands, and they staged a funeral for the spirits of education itself in 1988. That was 36 years ago. So they are still out there somewhere. Not a particularly popular college, you can say that. Gerson was founded in 1876, and from there it was a gradual process of every college allowing.
And these are accommodations as well? Or is it private?
This is private residence, yeah, this is the only private residence on this stretch of the road. These are 2-bedroom apartments. Went up in the 1980s. According to Zoopla.com, the average price is about £800,000 to buy outright. So you wouldn't be buying it, you'd just be renting it, which you're probably paying about £2,000 to £2,500. So from the outside they look, they don't look amazing, but I've seen pictures of the inside. They do look really, really nice. And you're paying for the view more than anything, because it's an average of the whole building as well. So the ones that are on the river, only 850 maybe, but up to that 900.
And these are the private houses.
This is private ground. This is all owned by Magdalen College. The building up there, that's Wentworth House. That is post-grad accommodation here at Magdalen. The original structure went up in the 1770s, but has obviously been retrofitted to a large extent. So that kind of marks the end of Magdalen's grounds.
And all of this backyard space is...
It's all just owned by the college, yeah, just free spaces.
So any resident can just come here and...
Yeah, anyone at Magdalen, yeah.
But not us.
No. They wouldn't dare let us.
So we can't go and just sit on that.
Fortunately not, no. When the colleges are open to the public, when they have these open days, you will be able to go inside, but for about 364 days of the 3 days of the year, it's a no-go zone.
Should I just take over?
Yeah, so that marks the end of Magdalen's grounds and the end of our tour as well. We have